Hello, my name is Robert Waite. I am Acumatica developer MVP, and I work for REPAY, real-time electronics payments. And I'm going to do a vlog article on using PowerShell to do code generation. Let me get my outline that I had prepared for this. So the problem that we're going to solve is for our surveys project, Acumatica Surveys, which is a community project that we've been doing over the last couple years. And well, it started during the pandemic, and we're going into some new phases of it, and we have some records that we want to initialize once the customization project is published. So we have a few options that we had discussed, and we got some reasons as to why we went with the option that we did. So we'll discuss those. So option number one would be to use the strategy that has been outlined in one of the T230 course, and it gets into an example of using a comma separated variable file that publishes along with the package that automatically initializes records. So this here is that example. I got a link to it. And you'll see that example within the tutorial material for the T230 course. So the reason, one of the primary reasons we didn't want to do that is there's a good degree of manual maintenance that would be needed to maintain that CSV file. We're currently in the process of just downloading and exporting the records as XML. Let me show you an example of that. We'll spin up an instance of Acumatica here. We'll show you that option. Wait for that to spin up. All right, so we're going to go into our surveys. We'll have a look at a survey record. Actually, it's survey component records that we want. Survey components. So this is one of the ones that we're auto-generating. And what we were doing was we would use this option here. And we would export this. We drop this file somewhere for the component. And what we were doing prior to having something automated what we want to do is, or let me back up a little bit. So what we were doing initially to get an instance configured with this is we would have all of those files, and then we'd use the import from XML option there to generate the records. So one of the other reasons we wanted to avoid using comma delimited files is we also have this sort of stuff. We have these really long records for the body of the content, and there's no guarantee that we're going to have any complications with commas being in there. And just generally, it's just a very long string. So it just wouldn't be the ideal place to maintain it. So we looked at that option. We considered that option first, but we discussed various options and decided we're going to go with something different. The other option is to just simply hard code the values in C#. So we could have gone with something like this, where we can just specify the DAC records and just hard code this in here for the records that we want, and then within the customization plugin, we would grab these records and just simply import them in, very much like the sample from the T30 course that we have here. So another aspect that's important to this is we're implementing a customization plugin interface. So and then we're doing the update database method, and these are the routines that are called to generate those components. And then I have some code generation that happens in the background. So one of the things that we need for code generation that's pretty popular is using the partial keyword. What essentially this does is it allows you to have two files to define a single class. So we have a single class here, survey customization plugin, and you'll see that we have another file over here, also survey customization plugin. One of these files is a code generated file. So essentially all of the code that's in this file is automatically generated via a PowerShell script. And then all of the code that's within this part of the file, this is manually maintained. And that this is the stuff that's not going to change relative to the stuff. So what we do is when we export those files, as I've demonstrated using that option to export the XML, we all store them within a folder. So I have distinct folders now at this point, one for survey components and one for attributes. And then we drop those XML files directly into these folders. And then the PowerShell script is going to do different logic based on both the content of both of those folders. So we could demonstrate that at this point. So let me just back up. So we discussed the hard-coded values in C# and why we didn't use that. There's same reason as we had there. There's just going to be a degree of manual maintenance, and what would be ideal is if we could just use those XML files directly as our source for information. So if we want to add survey components or attributes to it, or tweak a record out, all we want to do is export that file, get it into the right place, and just use it as the definitive source for that there. So our third option, which is actually the ideal option at this point, is to determine a way to programmatically invoke that import button. That'd probably be the most slick way of doing this. The reason we didn't go with that is there's a degree of uncertainty there. We don't know how complicated it's going to be to do something like that. There's a degree of research that needs to be done to figure out how to do it. And I think all of us on the team are confident that we can figure it out. It's just the unknown variable is the amount of time that you're going to sink into making that actually happen. If anybody has actually accomplished that, we all are very eager to see how you've done it, and perhaps you can follow up with a comment on this blog article, or email me directly. My email is rwaite@repay.com. I would love to know how to do that. Let me just add that email in there. So if you have a code snippet that uses and does specifically that, we would probably make the changes to use that there. But what was very clear in terms of what we can do is we can use a hybrid of options 1 and 2. So essentially, we are going to use the strategy here, but instead of using comma delimited files, we got a little script that just builds those records with a PowerShell script. And generally, there's not going to be a high volume of changes. We're going to maybe change this 2-3 times as the project develops. So we don't want to sink a whole lot of stuff into this. We want to have like a quick and dirty script to get the job done and just get it done super quick. So we're using a hybrid of 2 by implementing code generation using a PowerShell script. So let's do this. We currently have records established in our target tables. We can see that because I have some select statements prepared here, and we have them all there. I'm going to purge all of these records, and I'm going to show you the process of step through the PowerShell script itself. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these records. I think I do need to delete the detail first before I delete the header. Okay, so now we have an empty table. You don't want to do this in a production system, obviously. This is just a quick and dirty way of just getting rid of those records just to retest to see if our process is going to actively, automatically build these records. So let's get into the scripts there. I have the script right here, and I got a couple debug points set in here. So generally, there's a lot of stuff that I can do to refactor the script. It was pretty quick and dirty to spin it up. You do want to have at minimum like a description as to what it does in here. And this is the general format of how you would add a descriptive commentary on there. You could also add in like examples. At this point, you just run the script and it's just going to go and grab things. I could probably add some detail as to how to go through this, but essentially this vlog post is going to do that for me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit the play button up here or press F5 to run the script, and we're gonna hit that first breakpoint there. So all I'm doing is I'm initializing these variables. So if you do rerun this script, it may try to tack on to the previous version. We want to initialize and just make sure that those variables are empty. So we got a loop going on here. And this command here, this gets the content of the file. So essentially we're saying, get me all of the files within that survey components directory, which, so I have this script here at the root. We got all our stuff in survey components. So that for loop is just grabbed all of these files now at this point, and it's going to iterate through. So now we have the contents grabbed from this variable. What's really nice about PowerShell is that you have this interactive command prompt down here at the bottom. So if I want to inspect variables, I can do something specifically like that. There's also IntelliSense on it, so I can get in there and I can see dig into what that variable is. As you can see, you have IntelliSense when you're using the ICE. ICE stands for Integrated Scripting Environment. There's also another PowerShell type form where you use what's called tab completion. You don't have technically IntelliSense like this. You have something called tab completion. I don't know if I'll demo that here. I might do that in a future. Let me get back to this so we can inspect that row and we can see the body. So this is the content of that variable there. So that's really nice, just being able to inspect your variables directly from this command prompt here. And it really helps with the development process of building a script. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through and load all of these variables. And one way that you can inspect these variables is you could just highlight it as well, and you could just say, run this selection. So all it's going to do is it's going to run just that there, and you can see what the content is for each of these pieces. Now, I showed you an example here where we've grabbed the body. One of the things that was undesired was PowerShell, when you cast it to XML, it actually automatically finds HTML and it parses it for you. So it wants to make things easy for you, but it's actually undesired in terms of our needs, because we want to have the same, we want to have this exact format there with the escaped characters. So the way that I've done that in here is I've used some regular expressions. So here's an example of using a regular expression. It's just saying, hey, get me the, so this section right here is essentially just saying, get me the contents that's in between the body and the note attribute. And then that loads up. We can now inspect this element, and we can see that it's in the format that we want. All right, so the next step here is we're going to set up, these are called here strings. That's determined with the at and the quotation there. Yeah, quotation, just a little note, you do have to have that anchored to the far left for this to work. And essentially, this is just a little template to create this section of code, one of these sections. So it's just going to loop through and create these pieces here. So right now it's built that. We can have a look at this. Let's have a look at that variable new component. And sure enough, and we have it decorated up with regions as well. And then what we also want to do is we want to write an initialization section on that. So now we're going through the next one. Let me get down to that. All right, and then this particular piece right here, where we're making some calls. So this happens to be one of the methods that is on the manually maintained side of the class, and we just need to load it into that that section so that they all run. So I'm gonna do a Shift 11 out here to do a step out, and that'll get to the next section here. So what we're doing is we're initializing another here string, and now we're doing the attribute section. So we've now at this point pretty much built that whole section. We should be able to see, so that's one section there, and we have an entity section. So those are the entities that it's built. So essentially it's just building and concatenating strings. That's all the script is really doing. So we do the same thing here. Pretty much the whole concept is there. If I were to do this again, instead of building it directly to DAX, I probably would build anonymous types, and then do the casting and formatting on the C# side, so that I keep the script portion of it as super simple as possible. But we did hit some casting issues in there, and did that. So yeah, if I were to do this again, I wouldn't be building actual DACs. I'd build the anonymous methods, then convert the anonymous types, I should have said, and then I would have converted the anonymous types C# side and done any casting needed there. So that's all that's doing there. I'm going to loop out of this here to get to this next section. So at this point, we're now building the class. So we have the components in here where I've got some regions defined and whatnot here. And then we have this section that's going to get added. That's building all of the DAC components. I have the initialization component. This essentially calls a manually maintained method on the class. It just gets something initialized for that specific record, so it flows through the process. And then we have the exact same stuff happening on there. So that particular template here simply builds the class. And then the last thing that I do, this is a nice little trick to get whatever string into your clipboard. So right now it's in my clipboard. If I wanted to, I could spend a little more time and just automatically drop the content of what we just created where it needs to go. But it's just as easy to get in here, do a Control A, paste everything, to select everything, and then paste over top of it. So everything that I had code generated is now in this file here. We could compile the project. And what we'll do now, let's go and verify that we haven't run anything now at this point, but what we'll do is we'll get into we'll reload this. Just let it give it some time. All right, it's taking its time. Oh, there we go. And that's because we just built the extension library. So everything's just got to reload again. All right, so let's go to, we don't have any survey components now at this point. I'm gonna go to customization projects. I'll pull that new file in and I'm going to publish it. So in theory, when we publish, we should see those records automatically deleted, not deleted, automatically created based off of this code generation project. So essentially it's going to call this method when the stuff gets published, and our components are going to get initialized. So we just got to wait for this to load. All right, let me make sure that that. All right, here we go. We should be able to detect a new file now at this point. If we don't, I'm just gonna proceed with the test. Go, files, no modified files. Okay, I'm not going to troubleshoot that now, but essentially what we will experience now with that is, in theory, if we had made any changes to the XML files in that directory, that process that I just did is going to automatically generate those records once we publish. And I did do a test on this prior, so this should be working. So prior to our publish, we didn't see any records in there. It's still going. Need some patience. All right, we could see the survey component messaging being added there. So we know things are working. And if we now have a look at our tables, we see that they're populated with initial data, which was our objective. So at this point, we have a method of grabbing those XML files, putting them into source control, using them as the definitive uh, copy of the records that we want to have on board. And then when we do actively add or edit any of those records, we run that script, replace the file, and we have our updates in place. So I did have some other notes in here that I wanted to discuss during this. So let me just quickly look through my notes. We did discuss the customization plugin. That's generally what you use. You use that interface and implement that interface to automatically do some sort of process, anything you could possibly need during the publishing process. We discussed the partial keyword that allows you to split a class into multiple files. So the primary thing to understand with partial is it essentially just boils down to you defining a single class across multiple files. So it's very popular to use partial classes in terms of anything code generated where you have a human maintained part of the code, and then you'll have a automated code generated aspect of it as well. So generally you don't want to touch anything that's in a code generated portion of a class, and you would use whatever code generation tools that you need. You don't have to use PowerShell. It could be whatever you want, anything that is going to allow you to template something out. There's wonderful ways to do it with Python. You could do it with C# even if you wanted to. There's many different ways that you could template and do code generation. For me, PowerShell is a favorite because I just find it so easy to use. So that's the partial keyword. Challenges. So one of the things that I had a challenge, there was some stuff going on. The components part turned over pretty easy, but the attributes, these for some reason were not inserting quite right. And the problem with interfacing a customization plugin and testing this stuff or debugging stuff and setting a breakpoint, you can't get a breakpoint being set, or at least as far as I know, you can't get a breakpoint set within this method here. So there's nothing that you can bind to really make that happen. If anybody knows how to do that or has any ideas on how to do that, let me know. I'd love to learn how to do that if it is at all possible. But what I did to actually solve that is I wrote a temporary PXAction. I can actually show it to you here. I had this here. You can notice that it's all grayed out. I have this configured with conditional compilation. So I need to put the project into troubleshooting code mode before this actually compiles. So I don't want this button to be on the screen in a production instance. I don't want to get rid of the code either because I might need it again in the future. But all I would need to do to actually activate that is I would go into properties and conditional compilation symbols. And if I put in this code here, and saved it. As you can see, that code is now active. If I compile this, I'm now going to see that button, and I'm going to be able to get into this breakpoint, and I could test and figure out what was going on. So just a heads up as to what I found the issue to be is I had things defined as such. No. So as you can see, there is indeed a CS attribute, but you can see that that class is px.cs.cs attribute. So the insert statements were pretty much just barfing on it and wasn't going anywhere because it wasn't the precise class that we needed. So we needed to implement it to that there. So I just changed out my PowerShell scripts to add those in there, and everything just started to work again. Again, if I were to do this again, I probably wouldn't automatically generate the DAC objects themselves. I would automatically generate anonymous types and then do the casting and cast the anonymous type into a DAC in the human maintained section of it. I would just keep the code generation portion of it super simple as we're removing casting logic and other stuff from there. And it probably would have turned over a little bit quicker. So you live, you learn, and hopefully that might help somebody else. So I wanted to discuss that. So that we solved that with PX trigger. I showed you the conditional compilation. We're probably going to do a future coffee and code session on the topic of conditional compilation. No, that's been a hot topic in our surveys project, and we're eager to discuss that in a coffee and code. And then the casting issues, as I mentioned there. So we also did see, I did discuss while we were stepping through the code that PowerShell was automatically parsing the HTML pieces, and we were seeing it in the parsed format when we really wanted to have keep the escape characters and everything in there. So we solved that by using a regex. So that PowerShell script has an example of how you can use regex to extract pieces of information out. I do have just links to the code portions of this for the PowerShell script itself and the conditional compilation piece. All right, I hope you enjoyed watching this vlog, and happy coding. See ya.